Good day, my online friends. I just want to share the introduction to my book, From New Mills to New Life, with you today. From New Mills to New Life. This is the recently published From New Mills to New Life, and I just want to share it with you. Okay, so I'm going to share it with you. It was published in July 2020. So go and get your copy at Amazon.com. All you need to do is to go to my website at joshuaspencer.ca. So here we go. So I'll just read the introduction for you, and then you go and get your copy at joshuaspencer.ca. Here we go. Introduction. I began to have a constant and uncontrollable urge to consider writing my autobiography just about the year 2005. See, I was born into a family and grew up under circumstances that very few individuals who knew me then expected me to escape the sufferings, trappings and trimmings of poverty. I was part of a larger group whose most salient constants and hallmarks were one encumbered, inundated, and clustered in dire deprivation, a lack of motivation to succeed educationally or otherwise. I was part of a group that was destined to a dead-end road with no hope in view. One may ask, but why did it dawn on you to consider writing this autobiography only in the year 2005 and not in prior years? Was there something special that happened in that year that led you to want to divulge your past to the whole globe? Was it merely an idea to get famous and possibly wealth? Was it that time and age had stripped you of all shame and pride? Frankly, it could have been all of the foregoing reasons. Importantly though, it was in the year 2005, as you will glean in the reading of the pages of From New Mills to New Life, that I started to experience some semblance of respite from all the sufferings that I had endured upon emigrating to Toronto, Canada on December 20, 1993, and even in prior years in Jamaica. Mine was a life of great hardship from an early age in Jamaica to my present life in Canada. The early separation of my mother and father, the murder of my father subsequently, the insanity of a younger brother, the imprisonment of a pregnant sister in England, a spate of marriages that blew up into flames right in my face, the mistreatment of my mother by stepfathers, the passing of close relations, including my mother, aunt, grandmother, and uncle, all around the same time frame, and my struggles in Canada to retain a job that was in line with my qualifications. It was in September 2005 when I finally acquired a teaching post as a long-term occasional teacher. This was a time that I considered to have been the engine of change, the time that had stirred into motion a breath of well-needed fresh air in my sphere, in my prior struggling life. So, since 2005, I had begun to organize my thoughts and mindset around writing this autobiography. I still could not get the guts to do it. I wrote not even a single letter down towards this goal until today, August 1, 2009. I thought of how people would view me, my colleagues, my acquaintances, the few friends I have. I even envisioned me being interviewed via the Oprah Winfrey Show, Larry King Live, AC 360 with Anderson Cooper of CNN, and numerous other talk shows. Quite ambitious thoughts too, I must add. The constantly roaming eyes as I walked the corridors of my school and its offices were thoughts that glued to my cerebrum like the buttons on my shirt. I had great difficulties and struggles to overcome them. I got cold feet. How could I let the world know that this apparently grown and accomplished middle-aged man had had a past of terror? Instead, on October 30, 2006, I had a book published titled Let's Talk Africa and More. The book was disastrous. I made a few cents in royalties from its sales. For one thing, there were many typographical errors in the book. I had advised the publisher about these problems. They promised to correct these problems in subsequent prints. However, every time that I purchased a copy, the errors would still show up. Consequently, I stopped promoting the book. It still makes a very interesting read, I'm told, but the general errors and syntax errors make the work quite distracting to most readers. I decided then and there that my next work would be self-published. This route would give me more liberty with its editing and outlay. On August 23, 2007, I published Fluctuating Life, a book of poetry which reflected on certain aspects of my life via the use of poems, even though in a concealing way. I employed a lot of symbols and metaphors in the creation of the work, even disguising my identity by referring to myself as a member of the feminine gender at times, or as a plant. I hurriedly put together all the poems that I wrote and on which I could lay hands. This urgency had come about as I, on February 17, 2007, had become ill unexpectedly and absent from work for approximately 1 month. As soon as I got out of hospital, I started to compile the work. I wanted to ensure that if I should die, there would have been something for my children, ex-wives, brothers, sisters, and friends to cherish in my memory, which depicts my life's experiences in some way. It was the closest thing yet to my memoir. A significant portion of the poems in Fluctuating Life was based on my experiences, my struggles, my financial challenges. The following year, February 12, 2008, I published Contemporary Issues, Science, Africa, and More. This was a book of my original work with short essays pertaining to modern issues, some of which were of a moral nature and were highly debatable topics. I still, however, could not make up my mind to spill in my intestines and their contents to everyone, to the world. Now here I am writing From New Mills to New Life, my autobiography. It will be organized around my life in periods, starting at 0-year-old to my current age, 50 years in October 2009. There will be some brief details on the history of my native country, Jamaica. This is to provide a backdrop and deeper understanding of the period I will allude to in this autobiography. It will also help you to make sense and put into proper context my earlier Jamaican experiences. Specifically, there will be information with respect to the creation, development, or lack thereof, of what is currently Jamaica. In most cases, I will endeavor not to use the real names of individuals involved, apart from those mentioned in the acknowledgement and dedication, and a few others. These are individuals who will not be affected adversely by their names being referenced in this autobiography. All situations mentioned will be non-fiction, fact, and based on reality as I recall them from my memory or by the help of relatives and friends. Any relations that are mentioned are all real, even if fictitious names are used to protect these individuals at times. All quotes and dialogues in From New Mills to New Life will bear the best approximation as possible to the actual, to the extent that my memory or those of my relatives and friends who assisted me will allow. Some conversations and dialogues have been translated from Patois, Jamaica's Creole, to Standard English for universal comprehension. Later in this introduction, those whose true names have been used in this autobiography will be mentioned. Notwithstanding all I have said in the preceding paragraphs, I guess the questions still linger. Joshua, did you really have to do this? Did you? Really now? The fact is, this work is cathartic in nature. It's like taking a laxative for a constipated stomach, a constipation that had prevented you from enjoying the private facilities of the ladies' or men's room for a long time. Sprawling and unloading my pent up emotions will provide me with the needed therapy and assist me in bearing a salient portion of my emotional and residual trappings of my cognitive reservoir, deeply rooted feelings of sadness and hurt that had not totally and completely been erased from my being. A constantly stabbing thrust that gnaws away at my well being, one that was brought about by a rugged, painful, and atrocious past. It is not exactly an easy task to put my life's experiences to paper. It elicits tears with grueling pain for the most part. However, I truly believe this emotional healing had been put off for far too long. It was either now or never, live or die. The latent emotional air valve was either ready to explode to pieces or cause internal, mental and or physical damage. I could not afford for that to have happened. I was like a silent river ready to overflow its bank. The spilling of it all in this autobiography of mine will, hopefully, bring about this desired relief from grief. As you read From New Mills to New Life, you will find an honest description of my life's unfolding, events as I recall them. If there were any exaggerations or underreporting, it would not be a deliberate design on my part. I had taken care to corroborate all my thoughts and memories with those who should know prior to committing them to this book. I regard this book as my memoir, autobiography, worthy to be shared. This is, of course, not because I have lived a long, complex and interesting or accomplished life where I met and encountered innumerable dignitaries and defeated unrealistic challenges. It certainly is known dreams from my father by former President Barack Obama. It is simply because it represents my life's journey and those closely embedded in it for the last 5 decades. And even though during this half a century of my life I had not turned water into wine, Jesus, or commanded the sun to stand still, as was the case with my namesake Joshua of biblical traditions, though briefly the sun has stood still since, I did paddle across some muddy streams, inundated enough to have effected deadly harm to my will to succeed. Having had to withstand all these blistering experiences, and having succeeded and been mentally stable, in my humble view, deserve to be shared and recognized. The true names of some individuals, uncles, aunts, siblings, friends, will be real, and the events that so mentioned, these are events that will be unfolded as my recollection dictates, or that of reliable relatives and or friends who advise. It must also be emphasized that any resemblance to those fictitious names of alias names mentioned in this autobiography of someone of whom you may be aware must be treated as mere coincidence. This autobiography will not use the correct names of individuals involved except for those who will be mentioned later in this introduction. In the end, I hope that apart from the psychological healing which I truly deserved and aspired for in its creation, that I shall have been able to relate to others of similar experiences. Even as my experiences might not have been unique, probably even considered relatively trivial compared to the experiences of others, not everyone had taken the opportunity to share her or his with the world. Accordingly, the possibility that some poor, so-called helpless soul on the verge of relenting might be moved by it is enough motivation for me. It gives me inner peace for such possibility in its sharing. Let the words of these pages bring on a new meaning, as it will, according to your various and unique experiences and expectations. Tell a friend if you shall have benefit benefited from reading this book. Who knows, you might, in an indirect way, be helping to build a worthwhile future and a new outlook for a self-perceived hopeless soul. From New Mills to New Life, Joshua Spencer. Bye-bye.